Hello everyone, I am Bashar. Welcome to my channel TechQuest Learning Point. Today I am going to start the second episode of the Azure Data Fundamentals tutorial series that cover exam DP 900. This tutorial will help you to clear the exam DP 900 Azure Data Fundamentals. Data professionals typically fulfill different roles when managing, using, and controlling data. In this tutorial, you will learn about the various roles that organizations often apply to data professionals, the tasks and responsibilities associated with these roles, and the Microsoft Azure services used to perform them. The content of this tutorial is derived from Microsoft Learning Path Explored Core Data Concepts so that it can be helpful to take the preparation for the exam DP 900. I can assure that this tutorial will be helpful for you to achieve the Microsoft Azure Data Fundamental certification. Before starting this tutorial, let's see the contents at a glance. In this tutorial, which is entitled as Data Roles and Services, the various roles that organizations often apply to data professionals will be explained and made clear. Even all the tasks and responsibilities associated with these roles will also be explained in detail. Some of the Microsoft Azure services which is used to perform these tasks and responsibilities will be discussed in detail. It covers the various topics related to the data roles and services, including data professional roles and cloud services used by data professionals. In our daily life, we are generating huge data and then working with the data to produce a desired result. We cannot imagine without data for single days. In our business, we have many tasks related to the data, such as creating new data, collecting required data from various sources, processing the data, and analyzing the data. All the solutions we now have, like Internet of Things, AI, would be nothing if there was no data to support them. In order to manage, control, and use the data, organizations apply a wide variety of roles to data professionals. On the basis of different aspects of data management, there are various types of roles available in the world of data. Some roles are business-oriented, some involve more engineering, some focus on research, and some are hybrid roles that combine different aspects of data management. Any organization may define roles differently or give them different names, but the roles described in this tutorial encapsulate the most common division of tasks and responsibilities. It is important to keep the concepts on these roles and responsibilities for data professionals. The three key job roles that deal with data in most organizations are database administrators, manage databases, assigning permissions to users, storing backup copies of data, and restore data in the event of a failure. Data engineers manage infrastructure and process for data integration across the organization, applying data cleaning routines, identifying data governance rules, and implementing pipelines to transfer and transform data between systems. Data analyst explore and analyze data to create visualizations and charts that enable organizations to make informed decisions. The job roles define differentiated tasks and responsibilities. In some organizations, some persons might perform multiple roles. So in their role as database administrator, they might provision a transactional database, and then in their role as a data engineer, they might create a pipeline to transfer data from the database to a data warehouse for analysis. A database administrator is responsible for the design, implementation, maintenance, and operational aspects of on-premises and cloud-based database systems. They are responsible for the overall availability and consistent performance and optimizations of databases. They work with stakeholders to implement policies, tools, and processes for backup and recovery plans to recover following a natural disaster or human-made error. In other words, we can say about the responsibility of a database administrator that a database administrator have to be capable to design a new database, and as per the requirement of the organization, it should be implemented efficiently. After rollout, the database have to take necessary steps so that all database users can be connected with database server through proper permission and security. In order to sustain the consistent performance and optimizations of databases, have to make a plan for scheduled maintenance, policy for regular and long-term management, process for data backup and recovery. The database administrator is also responsible for managing the security of the data in the database, granting privileges over the data, granting or denying access to user as appropriate. So, it is clear that a database administrator must be strongly knowledgeable on tools and technology related to database and be capable on managed databases, assigning permissions to user, storing backup copies of data, and restore data in the event of a failure. Here I want to mention some typical duties of a database administrator as described in a job circular. Managing, monitoring, and maintaining company databases. Making requested changes, updates, and modifications to database structure and data. Ensuring database security, integrity, stability, and system availability. Maintaining database backup and recovery infrastructure. A data engineer collaborates with stakeholders to design and implement data-related workloads, including data ingestion, pipelines, cleaning, transformation activities, and data stores for analytical workloads. They use a wide range of data platform technologies, including relational and non-relational databases, file stores, and data schema. They are also responsible for ensuring that the privacy of data is maintained within the cloud and spanning from on-premises to the cloud data stores. They own the management and monitoring of data pipelines to ensure that data loads perform as expected. A data analyst enables a business to maximize the value of their data assets. They are responsible for exploring data to identify trends and relationships, designing and building analytic models, advanced analytics capabilities through reports and visualizations. A data analyst processes raw data into relevant insights based on identified business requirements to deliver relevant insights. The roles described here represent the key data-related roles found in most medium to large organizations. There are additional data-related roles not mentioned here, such as data scientist, data architect, and there are other technical professionals that work with data, including application developers and software engineers. Microsoft Azure is a cloud platform that powers the applications and IT infrastructure for some of the world's largest organizations. It includes many services to support cloud solutions, including transactional and analytical data workloads, Now I want to discuss on some of the most commonly used cloud services for data. Azure SQL is the collective name for a family of relational database solutions based on the Microsoft SQL Server database engine. Specific Azure SQL services include Azure SQL Database, a fully managed platform as a service PaaS database hosted in Azure. Azure SQL Managed Instance, a hosted instance of SQL Server with automated maintenance which allows more flexible configuration than Azure SQL DB but with more administrative responsibility for the owner. Azure SQL VM, a virtual machine with an installation of SQL Server, allowing maximum configurability with full management responsibility. Database administrators typically provision and manage Azure SQL database systems to support line of business (LOB) applications that need to store transactional data. Data engineers may use Azure SQL database systems as sources for data pipelines that perform extract, transform, and load ETL operations to ingest the transactional data into an analytical system. Data analysts may query Azure SQL databases directly to create reports. Though in large organizations, the data is generally combined with data from other sources in an analytical data store to support enterprise analytics. In order to manage the services for popular open source relational database systems, Azure includes the services such as Azure Database for MySQL, Azure Database for MariaDB, and Azure Database for PostgreSQL. Azure Database for MySQL, a simple to use open source database management system that is commonly used in Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP LAMP stack apps. Azure Database for MariaDB, a newer database management system created by the original developers of MySQL. The database engine has since been rewritten and optimized to improve performance. MariaDB offers compatibility with Oracle Database, another popular commercial database management system. Azure Database for PostgreSQL, a hybrid relational object database. You can store data in relational tables, but a PostgreSQL database also enables you to store custom data types with their own non-relational properties. As with Azure SQL database systems, open source relational databases are managed by database administrators to support transactional applications and provide a data source for data engineers building pipelines for analytical solutions and data analytics creating reports. Azure Cosmos DB. Azure Cosmos DB is a global scale non-relational NoSQL database system that supports multiple application programming interfaces APIs, enabling you to store and manage data as JSON documents, key value pairs, column families, and graphs. In some organizations, Cosmos DB instances may be provisioned and managed by a database administrator, though often software developers manage NoSQL data storage as part of the overall application architecture. Data engineers often need to integrate Cosmos DB data sources into enterprise analytical solutions that support modeling and reporting by data analytics. Azure Storage. Azure Storage is a core Azure service that enables you to store data in blob containers, scalable, cost-effective storage for binary files, file shares, network file shares such as you typically find in corporate networks, tables, key value storage for applications that need to read and write data value quickly. Data engineers use Azure Storage to host data lakes, blob storage with a hierarchical namespace that enables files to be organized in folders in a distributed file system. Azure Data Factory. Azure Data Factory is an Azure service that enables you to define and schedule data pipelines to transfer and transform data. You can integrate your pipelines with other Azure services, enable you to ingest data from cloud data stores, process the data using cloud-based compute, and persist the results in another data store. Azure Data Factory is used by data engineers to build, extract, transform, and load ETL solutions that populate analytical data stores with data from transactional systems across the organization. Azure Synapse Analytics. Azure Synapse Analytics is a comprehensive unified data analytics solution that provides a single service interface for multiple analytical capabilities, including pipelines based on the same technology as Azure Data Factory, SQL, a highly scalable SQL database engine optimized for data warehouse workloads, Apache Spark, an open source distributed data processing system that supports multiple programming languages and APIs, including Java, Scala, Python, and SQL. Azure Synapse Data Explorer, a high-performance data analytics solution that is optimized for real-time querying of log and telemetry data using post-query language KQL. Data engineers can use Azure Synapse Analytics to create a unified data analytics solution that combines data ingestion pipelines, data warehouse storage, and data lake storage through a single service. Data analytics can use SQL and Spark pools through interactive notebooks to explore and analyze data and take advantage of integration with services such as Azure Machine Learning and Microsoft Power BI to create data models and extract insights from the data. Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks is an Azure integrated version of the popular Databricks platform, which combines the Apache Spark data processing platform with SQL database semantics and an integrated management interface to enable large-scale data analytics. Data engineers can use existing Databricks and Spark skills to create analytical data stores in Azure Databricks. Data analytics can use the native notebook support in Azure Databricks to query and visualize data in an easy-to-use web-based interface. Azure HD Insight is an Azure service that provides Azure-hosted clusters for popular Apache open source big data processing technologies, including Apache Spark, a distributed data processing system that supports multiple programming languages and APIs, including Java, Scala, Python, and SQL. Apache Hadoop, a distributed system that uses MapReduce jobs to process large volumes of data efficiently across multiple cluster nodes. MapReduce jobs can be written in Java or abstracted by interfaces such as Apache Hive, a SQL-based API that runs on Hadoop. Apache HBase, an open source system for large-scale NoSQL data storage and querying. Apache Kafka, a message broker for data stream processing, Apache Storm, an open source system for real-time data processing through a topology of spouts and bolts. Data engineers can use Azure HD Insight to support big data analytics workloads that depend on multiple open source technologies. Azure Stream Analytics. Azure Stream Analytics is a real-time stream processing engine that captures a stream of data from an input, applies a query to extract and manipulate data from the input stream, and writes the results to an output for analysis or further processing. Data engineers can incorporate Azure Stream Analytics into data analytics architectures that capture streaming data for ingestion into an analytical data store or for real-time visualization. Azure Data Explorer. Azure Data Explorer is a standalone service that offers the same high-performance querying of log and telemetry data as the Azure Synapse Data Explorer runtime in Azure Synapse Analytics. Data analytics can use Azure Data Explorer to query and analyze data that includes a timestamp attribute, such as is typically found in log files and Internet of Things IoT telemetry data. Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview provides a solution for enterprise-wide data governance and discoverability. You can use Microsoft Purview to create a map of your data and track data lineage across multiple data sources and systems, enabling you to find trustworthy data for analysis and reporting. Data engineers can use Microsoft Purview to enforce data governance across the enterprise and ensure the integrity of data used to support analytical data workloads. Microsoft Power BI. Microsoft Power BI is a platform for analytical data modeling and reporting that data analysts can use to create and share interactive data visualizations. Power BI reports can be created by using the Power BI desktop application and then published and delivered through web-based reports and apps in the Power BI services, as well as in the Power BI mobile app. Review. Database Administrator. Key responsibilities of database administrator is to manage database, assign permissions to users, storing backup copies of data, and restore data in the event of a failure. Data engineer. Key responsibility of data engineer is to manage infrastructure and process of data integration across the organization, applying data cleaning routines, identifying data governance rules, and implementing pipelines to transfer and transform data between systems. Data analyst. Key responsibilities of data analyst is to explore and analyze data to create visualizations and charts that enable organizations to make informed decisions. Azure SQL Database. It is a fully managed platform as a service PaaS database hosted in Azure. Azure SQL Managed Instance, a hosted instance of SQL Server with automated maintenance which allows more flexible configuration than Azure SQL DB, but with more administrative responsibility for the owner. Azure SQL VM, a virtual machine with an installation of SQL Server, allowing maximum configurability with full management responsibility. Azure Database for MySQL. It's a simple to use open source database management system that is commonly used in Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP LAMP stack apps. Azure Database for MariaDB. It is a newer database management system created by the original developers of MySQL. Azure Database for PostgreSQL. It is a hybrid relational object database. You can store data in relational tables, but a PostgreSQL database also enables you to store custom data types with their own non-relational properties. Azure Cosmos DB. It is a global scale non-relational NoSQL database system that supports multiple application programming interfaces APIs, enabling you to store and manage data as JSON documents, key value pairs, column families, and graphs. Azure Storage. Azure Storage is a core Azure service that enables you to store data in blob containers, file share, table. Azure Data Factory. Azure Data Factory is an Azure service that enables you to define and schedule data pipelines to transfer and transform data. Azure Synapse Analytics. Azure Synapse Analytics is a comprehensive unified data analytics solution that provides a single service interface for multiple analytical capabilities. Azure Databricks. Azure Databricks is an Azure integrated version of the popular Databricks platform, which combines the Apache Spark data processing platform with SQL database semantics and an integrated management interface to enable large-scale data analytics. Azure HD Insight. Azure HD Insight is an Azure service that provides Azure hosted clusters for popular Apache open source big data processing technologies. Azure Stream Analytics is a real-time stream processing engine that captures a stream of data from an input, applies a query to extract and manipulate data from the input stream, and writes the results to an output for analysis or further processing. Azure Data Explorer. Azure Data Explorer is a standalone service that offers the same high-performance querying of log and telemetry data as the Azure Synapse Data Explorer runtime in Azure Synapse Analytics. Microsoft Purview. Microsoft Purview provides a solution for enterprise-wide data governance and discoverability. Microsoft Power BI. Microsoft Power BI is a platform for analytical data modeling and reporting that data analysts can use to create and share interactive data visualizations. Thank you for watching this tutorial. I hope you all have been able to take the idea about the data roles and services. If you think this tutorial is helpful for learning the Azure Data Fundamentals, please click on the like button and request you all to share it more and more to the persons who are searching the tutorial like this. If you have any questions on this tutorial, opinions and queries about this channel, please type this in the comment box. You also mail to me. In the description box, email ID is given for you. Kindly subscribe this channel and click on the bell button so that you can get notification when a new tutorial is published.